Let's get ready to throw down.
Awesome. Welcome to the show, everybody. We are talking about accountability today because it is super important. Because if you don't have some accountability, you don't have goals, in my opinion, you have dreams. Clint is making these huge, like,
slow blinks.
Like Bambi.
So, whose idea was this topic? Was this my topic? No, this is Paul's idea. So Paul's in the booth, so he can't chime in. But, you know, I think accountability takes some different forms, right? You can have an accountability partner. You can just be like Clint and just be accountable to yourself and not need any outside reinforcement.
Okay, so you hit on a topic, or the topic accountability, and rightfully so. It's going to be different for everybody in everybody's industry, but there's some key components to accountability that I think affect everybody, regardless of the industry and what you sell or what you do, because it's like your accountant and my accountant, when they get our books, they follow certain standards to produce results, to give you information back so you can make some decisions. And that's what accountability does in your life, right? If you're writing some of this stuff down, you're holding yourself to a plan, you're putting a timetable together usually, and you're categorizing the different aspects of whatever you're trying to accomplish.
So can you be accountable without a plan?
Yeah. Yes.
Ask Clint.
Absolutely.
I disagree.
No, how?
Oh, how?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a plan. It's just maybe not on paper, right?
Exactly.
Okay, but that's different than not having a plan. You're just saying
Right.
the form of the plan is written.
I want to sell $35 million this year, but I don't have a plan. I don't have any way of getting there. How does anybody hold me accountable?
All you have
to
is a goal. You
Yeah.
don't have a plan, and there's no accountability
But to some people, that's all the plan you need.
No, absolutely not.
I think Clint is very mentally. He has his plan.
Challenge?
He has no. I think he has his plan
Challenge
in his
accepting.
Put your crayons
Hold on,
down
no.
and
Go ahead.
That's okay. I just think some people, and Clint's an example of this, that he has the plan in his head. He's, and I'm kind of like that too. But I have found being more accountable on paper does keep you more stringent to a more exact plan, where you're not just kind of what you were talking about earlier, just haphazardly going about your days. Yeah.
But here's what also occurs too, right? Your plan for the day. You know, what am I going to get done today? And so you jot some notes down, or you have it in your head, or wherever you have it. But
Still have a plan.
But it's there. But you get that phone call that's distracting, or something that
There it
takes
is.
you
Yeah.
off a task. Where do you go? Where were you in the process of accomplishing what you needed to accomplish? And if you have to go back and mentally run through the Rolodex, maybe that's doable. It's just not in my world.
I was going to say,
I've got to
that's
have
not
it
for you.
down
Yeah.
so that I can say, wait a second, noon, I eat my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then I take my nap, and then cartoons come on, and then,
Oh, God.
wow,
You know-
wow, it's 5 o'clock, time to go home.
You know, Big Pharma is, and I'm sure there's other companies that do it, but Big Pharma is really big on, not to be redundant using big, but they really require their sales team to keep such a regimental, just this plan that they spend so much time and have conference calls. And it took away. I'm so glad when I was in pharma that when I started, he basically, my boss basically said, go out and make some calls and make some money. And he would call me. I think I've said this before. He would call, and you're not even going to believe what your check is. And I'm like, I don't want to know what my check is. I want to know how much success I had by the amount of, so that account of, that was
amount of what?
the amount of calls I made that were successful. So that made me that was my accountability, because I saw the success. But I think someone lets an eye like Al, I think he really does need to have a written down plan, because he does have peanut butter jelly and cartoons in his day that screw up his whole plan. And I think
Everybody does, though, right?
I don't know. I don't know if Clint and I are like that as much. I want to accomplish what I have in my head I want to do each day. I think it's important to you, because that's you just need all your ducks in a row, you know?
Well, for me, we hit the nail on the head, right? There are parts of selling that I like, and there are parts of selling that I don't, right? And so if I have a day and there's a section of my day and it's like coming up on the period of time where I have to like follow up and, you know, do the things that I don't really like to do. I like having conversations. I don't like following up or creating scopes of work. So when I have to do that and then the phone rings and then I allow myself to take that call and stuff like that, then everything kind of gets scattered. And everybody has got parts of the role that they like and the parts of the role that they don't like, right? And the things that you don't like are super easy to be like, I'm going to do that later. I'm going to do that later, right? So without a plan for me, I even me being a C, right? If I don't have like my plan and my priorities in place and stuff like this, then other stuff gets in the way, right? I'll hop into my email when I'm supposed to be doing follow-ups or, you know, creating content or doing something else. And so for me, it is like keeps me on track, right? With goals and priorities. And then I can communicate that with like other people in my life, right? Like Melissa, who works on my team and we're, you know, together, she comes up and she's like, hey, can you do this? And I'm like, well, I got to do this and this and this. This feels like it's more important than this right now. And she's like, cool, I get it. But she knows my goals and knows where I'm trying to go to. So that makes my life easier. Whereas before we started working together, right, and I was just working from home, everybody who doesn't work for themselves or work from home just assumes that when you work for yourself, you're just always available. Hey, can you go run this errand for me? Or can you go do this? Or can you pick me up from the airport? And it's like, no, I can't do those things. I'm working.
I'm at work. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've started doing that I think helps with accountability is I've got a day timer that's got 4 categories because I have different divisions and different things that require, you know, a different skill set.
Humble brag. Go ahead.
But one of them, so I list and I list and I list, and on the 4th column it just says Al, right? And on that column, you know, starting at 7 o'clock and going through the entire day, there are days that I write down exactly what I did. And I'm completely disappointed by the end of the day because I've spent too much. If you really look at where you're spending the time, most of us are going to say, I goof off too much. If you're really honest about, now, not everybody.
See, I don't think that at all. Like, no, I don't.
And I'm not saying you do. I say that I do. I get distracted.
And that's why
I spend too much time.
What do you, Clint, do you think you waste a lot of time?
None of my time's wasted.
That's the way I feel. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that.
Me breathing's fortunate for you guys.
I don't think that, but
The gift.
I do think
We're
it's
just going to call you the
different-
gift.
Oh, man, I love it so much.
As if it's the first time I've heard that.
Oh, I'm not even original with it. Here I'm trying to be witty and it's failing miserably here.
So, do you think that you can have real accountability without having someone else included? Do you think that you?
I can do a lot of things without somebody else included. So I'm assuming accountability would fall into that category as well.
That's my biggest failure with accountability is because I expect everybody to be accountable like I'm accountable for myself, right? So if you do this X job and I do Y job, and it takes us to, you know, to work together to get a task done, I expect you to have your end covered, not for me to go check on you or you to come check on me, you know, in between periodically before we get to that meeting. Like, that's crazy to me.
But that's interesting, because you and I have talked about in the past that whenever there's an outside component who you don't know and don't trust. I mean, even when we were launching this thing, you were like, look, I'm going to crush. I don't know about the rest of you guys, you know, before we started. And
how's that worked out for you?
Pretty awesome.
So doesn't that kind of counteract with this idea that like no one gets any credit until you show that you can do it? So why would you give anyone the benefit of the doubt of being accountable to the things that they say they're going to do?
I just think that
because you have to sometimes. You can't do it all yourself.
Professional world, right? You're hired to do a job.
Yeah.
Hopefully when you got hired on, you got vetted out and your resume said you could do this. We agreed. You got hired. Okay, now you need to go do your shit, right? And so when we come back together, I shouldn't have, oh, well, I didn't get it done on time. Like, what do you mean you didn't get it? You had a goal. You said you could do it. Go do it, right?
Do you have any patience for that whenever someone comes and...
Not really. I mean,
well, then you're
really
telling me everything works as it should on the time frame that it should. There's no modifications.
No less. Yeah,
there's reasoning.
Doesn't work that way.
No. There's reasoning of, you know, maybe legitimate reasoning why you didn't get to the end game, and I'm okay. Let's assess that and how do we make it better. I'm always game with that. But don't just tell me I didn't get it done.
But you can't tell me you haven't heard, well, I'm waiting on the client to get me these specs so that I can...
But that's a legitimate reason, right?
Okay, what I'm saying, those do come up.
No doubt.
Okay.
I'm just saying that don't come to me and tell me I didn't get it done, because now you're trying to make me hold your own accountability in my accountability. Now I have to make you part of my accountability, and that's fucked up because you're a professional in this game, or you're an adult. Let's just say that.
But okay, so let me ask you this question: as a leader of a team, don't you like want to step in and kind of build accountability steps with everybody on your team?
I mean, I give them goals, right? I mean, that is my account. That's what I'm talking about, is that I trust everybody on my team to get their shit handled.
Because
right?
you've told them?
Because because I have my shit to handle, right? And when we put it all together, we're a successful team. But when there's a weak link in the chain because somebody screwed off that day, or
now I will agree. I will point this out too. Sometimes people, they're not getting things done because they're just not getting it done. Yeah. Right? You can make all the excuses on, like, they didn't give it to me. Well, did you call them back a second time?
Absolutely.
Did you stay ever diligent on getting that information? Because that's half the battle sometimes in these games that we have to play called business. So to that point, some of this stuff, you're like, how hard did you push your level of accountability or desire to do your job to be part of this equation that you knew had a hard stop right here?
Being better than them. You can't expect someone to be as accountable as you.
And what I'm saying is, after you've trained, you've given everybody the proper tools. That's a huge part of it, right? Is giving everybody the proper, make sure they have the education that they need to do the job that they're going to do, the training, just the physical tools, the computers, the technology to do what I'm asking you to do. If all of that's covered and goals are set, I mean, the excuse is on yourself at that point, in my book, unless there's legitimate reasons of why, right? There's things that happen. I get that. I'm just saying the excuse of, I didn't get it done today. Why? Right? Now I'm in your business.
But do you care about the why, though? Right? Because I mean, isn't it pretty black and white for you? I mean,
you tell me that a couple of times and it's just over.
Okay.
Right.
So very specifically, and then we can move on, but I have one last question about this idea. You inherited this team that you're managing now, right? For the most part. And so I get it if you're part of the vetting and the hiring and process and everything else, right? You're going to have probably a deeper level of trust. But with you inheriting this team, right? And how do you do you walk in the door saying, okay, cool, I'm with this company and I'm going to trust that they did the right thing and I got to trust these guys? Or in the back of your head, are you like, man, I don't know if you guys are going to make it?
Yeah, a little bit of all, right? Yeah, I mean, so probably the first couple weeks that I was there, I remember having conversations with my boss saying, look, it's a little unusual for me because I've been tiptoeing on people's feelings, right? Because there's a lot of tenure here. And I don't want to just come in storming and being that, that guy. So for probably one of the first times in my life, I actually took a step back and assessed, and it took me about a whole 2 weeks to realize where everybody's skill sets were at. And I'm still learning those, advanced skill sets of what people can and can't do. But yeah, I mean, inheriting a team, there's still a checklist in my head of where they need to be and what they, in my head, I have a timeline, okay, if, June hits and they're not here, time to make a decision. Right. And they know that. Right.
So then that brings up, there are indicators, short-term and long-term indicators that you need to be looking for that will help you with that accountability, right?
For sure.
Have you met the benchmarks? Where are you in the process? And sometimes sometimes it's just about an adjustment, right? Where I've set my time frames too short. I need to extend these because it takes a little bit longer than I anticipated.
Ramp up of like a new salesperson, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not a perfect science. I mean, but you can say, we do understand how many hours there are in a day, what my work day looks like, what my week looks like, and then begin to figure out how to be successful within certain time frames.
Oh, I'm a true believer in that you start with revision 1 of a plan. And by the time the task gets finished, you're probably on revision 100.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that goes
particularly in your business.
I was going to say, in construction, it happens by the minute, right?
Yeah.
And then even going back to my old life of like combat, right? You draw up all the stuff with sticks and rocks in the sand you want, but what actually happens
too many variables.
There's too many people on the other side that are going to change up all that
and
stuff.
There's weather and there's
but
things that change.
Sure, that relates to a customer in sales, right?
Sure.
He's going to screw your plan up. He's not playing your playbook. Right? You can have it. It's a good idea to prep, but chances are it's not going to go exactly how you
But
think.
starting with a template, then it's like a roadmap, right?
Well,
So if I'm going down the freeway and I run into traffic and I've got you're laughing.
I am
because-
laughing, but go ahead, finish your thought. I'll tell you.
No,
why
I
I'm
was just
laughing.
simply saying that I've got 5 outs for traffic on the freeway.
Yeah.
Because I have to get to where I'm going, and I probably need to be there as close to on time as possible.
Mhm.
Right? That's all I'm saying.
So I think you and I are saying the same thing. We're just talking about it differently, right? Because like a minute ago, you said that there are like short-term indicators and long-term indicators, right? And if you go back and listen to our KPI episode, then that's exactly the same thing. Because
I
let's
wasn't
say,
sure we could even say that, so that's why I didn't. Anyway, go ahead.
No, yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about our own shows because we're awesome according to Clint. Well, he is anyway. But so let's say that you hire.
No, I meant the term KPI.
Oh,
I forgot we actually
yeah.
used that in
Absolutely.
an episode.
Yeah. It's leading indicator, KPI,
Yeah.
key predictive indicator, whatever you want to call it. But let's say that you go hire a salesperson,
Mhm.
right? Are you really just going to be like, okay, cool, here's your goal, see ya, go make it happen?
Absolutely
Depends
not.
on how you hired them.
What do you mean?
I mean, if a guy's been in that business for
If
20
they're dragging,
years
if
doing
they're
that
bringing
stuff,
their
yeah,
own
I mean,
clients,
come on.
then yeah,
I mean,
agree
I'm
with
not
Clint on
going
that
to
one.
grab a 30-year sales guy that's been doing this and killing it for another company, and you get him to come over.
Now
and
sit
then-
down with
and then-
me. Let's
yeah.
see. Let me look at what you're doing because I've
I mean,
got some suggestions.
I work in reverse a little bit. Probably for you, it's more like, well, let's go see what you got, right? And we'll sit down. And, I'm assessing you all the time. And in 3 or 4 months, I have a goal in my head at Mark III. I need him to be here, and if he's not, now I need to get into his accountability, and that bothers me, right? That's why I say that's where I have my biggest failures in accountability is because, dude, you've been doing this for 30 years. I mean, you killed it over there. Why not? Why aren't you killing it here, right?
Okay, so then what happens when that guy says, "Hey, it's coming, boss. I just need a little bit more time."
But see, now I'm in your
you lose
accountability.
faith, though, right?
But I'm in your accountability now, so
When-
it's like, show me.
When
right?
you step into that accountability role, are you already kind of like over that person? You specifically as a D, right? You
Oh,
hired this guy, you gave him
that's
a
what I'm
goal,
saying. Yeah,
you give him kind of like a ramp up time, which you might not communicate with him, which I don't know if that's super fair, but you're just kind of like you have these expectations that are not clearly communicated.
sure.
So
In my mind, they are crystal clear.
well, of course they are.
I
in your
know.
mind, and this is part of the
Absolutely.
so struggle of a D.
When we sit down on day one, I'm like, all right, man, we got 30 million to sell this year. I need you to be at 8 million in month 3. We're good to go. Hey, no problem, boss. Got it. I'll go kill it. To me, that's a crystal clear path that we agreed upon.
Mhm.
It's not for that person,
It's
probably.
not for that person,
I
yeah,
know,
I
and
think.
that's why I say this is a work in progress, right?
I'm like, you said 3 million or you
Yeah.
said 30 million? Sorry, missed a zero
Yeah.
there. Sorry, boss.
Okay.
And so I think that what happens is that kind of conversation happens a lot, right?
Mhm.
You get hired as a sales role, right? And you get, because I can remember applying and getting this job with a bank, and they wanted me to go go out to like businesses like say like a supermarket and set up a table, get permission to set up a table and sign up people for bank accounts there. And
Nice.
I the guy was asking me, hey,
I
Love
run
the
that
banking
as-
industry.
do you
Scumbags.
Yeah, I know,
Like
complete scummy,
run.
so scummy. And when
Because we have all these fees we wanted.
well, the thing
There's a
was
reason.
is when we dug into those kinds of accounts, they never funded, right? Because people were super happy to like sign up for them, but they never came to the
I
bank
was
to
about to
make the deposit. So then they would get some fees and it would write off and go to collections. And I'm like, I don't want to do my business this way. Like this doesn't make any sense. And then
Gummy
the
approach.
guy who hired me was like, hey man, we talked about this. And I'm like, well,
You didn't tell me how shitty it was going to be on
yeah,
the back end.
well, and then I'm like, hey, look at the data. These accounts never fund. They never actually open. And he was like, well, still, we have to do it. And then I'm like, why, right? And then I get John's not a team player kind of thing, And what that is that there's too many like silos in some of these sales roles about like
What that
buckets you
is
have to
that some douchebag middle
fill.
management.
Oh, absolutely.
Just doing what I
brainy-
told.
And he's like never been on the front line in some cases,
Yeah.
or was there for a very short period of time and somebody died, right? Or they,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
he
he
moved
has a
into
task
slot.
and he's just meeting it.
But
That's
no,
all.
he doesn't. He's not
He's trying to
thinking
carve
through
out
it.
a niche, is what
Exactly.
he's trying to
He's
do.
trying to be creative at your expense of your time and effort.
And I like the phrase, well, corporate directed us to do this, so you got to go do it. It's
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
no, you're directing me
Yes,
to do this.
exactly. Own it.
Yep.
And this sucks,
Yeah.
right?
And that's a pretty good topic to talk about in accountability is own the stuff that you tell your team to do or even yourself, right?
Absolutely.
It's like,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm doing this because it matters, and I told myself we could do this.
Or I've done this before.
Sure.
You can't. Yeah, I mean, there are certain nuances. Oh, you brought something new, but remember the task has been done by the leadership. Right?
Yeah. And Jocko talks about this all the time in his podcast and on his book. He's like, if you don't know, then go be honest with your team and be like, hey guys,
I'm not sure how this is going to work out.
I'm not sure how this is going to work either, but like, help me out. And like, let's just like try to move the ball. And
Nothing wrong with that statement.
Then we can go back and say, hey, it didn't work.
We tried, right?
Exactly.
We gave it
You know how many times we've been on patrol in Ramadi and just been like, I don't know what I don't really truly know what we're going to do.
We're just walking around.
And here's the 30,000 foot view plan because some colonel back whatever said to do this, and it's like, yeah, but you start asking why and what are we doing? And
that's crazy because like, I don't know how much we've talked about this on the show, but like you weren't like normal rank and file, right? I mean, you were pretty a pretty high value asset.
I mean, there's a point where it's like you're sending me for a reason, and you probably have a reason way up there in your ivory tower is what I would say.
But if you don't communicate it, then you lose.
But you're talking to me and I'm on the ground, and it's like I can remember one time it was like, you guys need to go walk in front of the Humvees because we're tired of getting the Humvees blown up. They cost too much. It's like,
what?
Time out. You want me to go prod with a stick in the ground? You're crazy, But it was like,
wow.
But in their map, in their mind, it was like, well, if we need to change things up, I need them to do that. They're just going to do whatever I say because they're accountable for their own actions. And
so, okay, that's like a really solid point because like, what do you do when you're let's say that you're a salesperson, right? Frontline person, you get promoted up, right? And then you might get promoted again, in a larger structure. How do you maintain some kind of, I guess, knowledge about like what's actually happening on the front line?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely, literally people call them accountability meetings, right?
Yeah,
they
I was going to
pull
say
everybody in every
performance
Monday.
meetings is what they're normally called, right?
You pull them in every.
Let's talk about your pipeline, guys.
Yeah, every Monday you pull them in. It's like, all right, what do we got on the schedule this week? Who's meeting with who? So I have a huge problem with those meetings, right? Because it's like, I hired you to do a job, which is sell stuff, right? If you need my help, I'm always here, and I'm always open door policy. You want to talk about it, you want to role play, you want to do all these things, I'm here. But if I've got to get in your shit and say, okay, you need to have 7 meetings instead of 6, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, if you have to be babysat all the time, I think it's important. Now, one of the biggest conflicts Al and I ever had was I have an account and I'm on it. I know exactly what's going on, even when it doesn't look like. Sometimes things,
Even when I'm at the mall shopping. Where you at? Well, Target again.
Okay, so
I'm like, okay.
Oh, that never happened. I
didn't know that they were one of our major accounts.
Why are you saying that?
I'm joking.
I know. Okay, make sure.
It's tongue in cheek.
So
right?
I think
because you like to go to Target. We can say that, right? Isn't that your favorite store?
I do.
Are you in Target a lot when I call
like
you?
I'm
just asking.
Welcome to Front
prices.
Street, man.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, my point is that what Clint was saying, if Al called me every day and said, "What are you doing today? I want to know where you're going to be at," then I think I would go crazy. I would leave me alone.
That, boss.
I don't want that. No, that's just
but Nan is strictly commission, right?
Yeah.
If she doesn't want to work, she doesn't obviously have bills to pay.
Well, sure, but I think there's like a sweet spot there in the middle, right? Because I'm not just gonna show up and be like, cool, here's your goal, go get it. Because to me, that would drive me nuts, right? Like I would feel very uncomfortable, right? And honestly, whenever Al and I worked together, his favorite saying to me was like, cool, go make something happen. And I'm like,
doing what?
So that works really well for me.
No.
Gotcha, boss. I'm on it.
No, I need as a C, I need more information in that because there's so much ambiguity in that statement.
But in a leadership role, you got to know who those people are in your team because I will set goals with every one of my team members very, very differently based on personality alone.
Okay, that's super important to talk about because if you as the D are super comfortable of like, hey, I want as little information as possible so that way I can go do it and feel like it's mine, and then you're doing that with someone like me, I'm going to feel very uncomfortable, right?
I mean, when I'm communicating with my 2 super eyes on my team, it's like, hey, 30 million, we got to kill it this year. Go get that shit done. Boom, they're gone, and they're going to go kill it because that's their personality, right? That works well for them. Now, along the way, month 3 when you don't sell anything, and month 4 and you got people asking you, okay, what's going on here? That's where I have the breakdown of I should have been a little more accountable of everything that was going on, and now I'm in your shit.
But okay, so when that happens, and then Al had something to say, so don't forget it. But when that happens, and then you have to get up in their shit, as you're saying, do you? Because it's so easy as a sales guy to just hope, right? I mean, and I think that we all have had hoped on deals in the past and stuff like this, and now we don't kind of thrive in hope. But it's so easy when you hire a sales guy, right? Especially if you don't have a CRM or process or KPIs or like a goal or a plan, right? Other than go sell this much money.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, it's coming. I'm waiting on these prospects. I got this one guy in the hopper. Man, once he closes, boss.
I hear it every day.
I know you do.
Yeah.
So how do you separate
it really
that?
does happen.
It does happen,
Right.
right? It happens with salespeople all the time. And if you don't have like KPIs and like weekly behavior counts and activities and stuff like that, when they hit that threshold of when they're supposed to be producing, they're going to be looking for the other job if they're not producing, right? So you miss out on all the coachable moments, in my opinion.
Well, okay. So you just spoke to where my thought took me. In my experience, it is that you get somebody on your team, or you're bringing somebody in, or you're that somebody. And in the beginning, you ask a lot of questions, man, because you got to get that information so you know how to skin the cat or get this job done.
Mm-hmm.
When that salesperson starts to falter is when they've lost deals or they've not accomplished the sale. And then what that progresses into is discouragement and then lack of avoidance, lack of communication. So now my guy out in the field, I'm not getting any phone calls. I'm hearing crickets.
Yeah.
And if I let that go on too long, I'm doing them a disservice. They're maybe not fit or cut out for this type of sales. Yeah. So when you start hearing those crickets, because early on it's the eager beaver, boss, I'm on this, but hey, I got to ask the question, right? If you're not having success, but if that goes on too long, and as a manager or even accountability for myself, I'm asking questions about accounts I want to capture.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not constantly going, well, that didn't work, or I got shut down here, that's an internal process as well as an external process within a corporation.
And we talked about teamwork, and that's what that's about. You know, you have to have someone that you're accountable to by but your boss, other salespeople.
There's also a communication of expectation there, right? Because I don't think Clint, as a D, is going to go back and ever admit, hey, I need some help, right? I'm struggling here, right? I mean, like, I don't think that that's like normally in the D's warehouse if you're unaware.
Yeah, it's very far down the list for me to get to that point where I'm like, shit.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. I need some help.
But okay. But does that go back to I'm going to modify my plan?
Yeah.
And if I get shut down, I'm going to own the shutdown. I'm not going to hide from the fact that I just got the door slammed on my face, or I didn't make as much progress as I felt I should have.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go find somebody, borrow somebody to get through that door and follow and move me, inch me forward.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's
so you're not
thing.
against using people to help you get where you need to be.
Yeah, that's a very different scenario, what you just said versus what John said, because I think that if I'm asking you for help, I have burned every idea and everything that I could ever possibly think that might work. I've done that before I come to you. Yeah. Versus
I go the other way.
Exactly. So very different personality of a C, where it's like, I'm going to do this all up front. I'm going to ask you for help, and I want guidelines, and I want all this stuff first. That doesn't work in my world at all.
Well, you can't predict everything that's going to happen, so that's not necessarily true. I mean, things happen.
Well, it doesn't make it right. It's just his personality.
Yes, absolutely, right. And so then what happens, and I think we talked, I think about this on our culture episode, is, you know, you get that D with, you know, some I, and they get promoted up, and then they're the sales manager, and they're very much like Clint, right? I'm going to figure it out, and I'm only going to come ask for help if it's like a last ditch effort. And then you hire someone like me who wants to know lots of details, lots of information and stuff like this. And there's a lack of patience there for the unaware D to deal with someone like that.
And sometimes that wears me out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, granted, I want to train, I want to give you some information, but if I'm constantly having to hold your hand, because sometimes I don't know, I'm not in that account. I didn't go through the door. I didn't see the gatekeeper. Do you have a white knight? All these different things that I would be looking for. Maybe you're not looking for those. Yeah. So it's really hard to my pattern to be your pattern, except on when it is.
For sure, right? And that's why this stuff is so important, right? From like sales to like regular communication to like everything else. If you don't know who you are, then you don't have any idea of understanding, right? Because I mean, for a long time before figuring out that I was a C and I'm not like a gut driven, just going to jump and then figure it out, like I would be like, man, how do I get that level of confidence?
Sure.
right? And it's just not there, right? I get there a different way, and that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? But when you're in a sales role and you're dealing with a sales manager who's like, man, just go figure it out just like I did, you'll get there.
Yeah, so my boss comes to me probably once a week, very regularly, and says, hey, Clint, is there anything I can do for you today? Is there anything you need from me? Very good leadership,
culture,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my answer is, why do you ask? Like, I'm serious. Why do you ask? Are we failing? Do you think we're failing? Like that goes in my head.
It's
instantly.
weird to me that you go to there, because I would go to there.
Because otherwise I would ask you, I would ask you for help if I needed it, right? But now you're asking me if I need. I feel like you're tiptoeing around this a question that you really want to ask.
There's another elephant in the room we're not addressing.
And the answer is always like, I don't know. We're
that.
killing it.
I've
I
done
just
that with
just
you,
want to make
and you're
sure
like,
I'm locked up in a meeting for the next 4 hours. Just want to make sure you don't need me for anything. Love that approach. And it's funny because just as we were talking earlier, like, I'm going to burn every bridge. And I sat down with him on Wednesday and was like, hey man, I've got a sale going on. We made it all the way to the finish line and then radio silence. Like, I've never, to be honest with you, it's the first time it's ever happened to me where I've gotten that far and then just silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's funny. I expected to go silent first, and I know how to get out of the silence. But when I've had all these agreements and then silence, that's a new one on me, right? So, and I told him that story, exactly what I just said. And I said, so I think there's a couple other things. And you asked me if I needed any of your help yesterday. So I'm coming to you. I need you as a president to call their president to president, and try to work a little bit past the relationships that I have built. He's like, and it was a very working thing. It was like, well, how do you want me to do that? I said, just call the front desk and say,
how did he take it? Your boss?
He was like, I'm on it, man. What do you need me to do?
And is he a D, your boss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a DI.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of those conversations with other people in the industry that don't work for me, right? But they're the manufacturer, or they know a little bit about the client. And Nan and I have these discussions, and we go outside of our little box to get some more information from people, because we've run into dead ends. We're at a sticking point. You do whatever it takes to officially shut that file or say we can't do business. Right. So if you run around trying to shut things down, which is probably good on the front end, but if you've got some traction, man, you want to keep that going at all costs. And anytime you get a stall, you start looking for somebody to help you with the fact that you stalled out. And that's not defeat. That's just recognizing, and that's the accountability to this particular sales process.
I think that's territory planning, right? I mean, if you have a list of your top people, right? The top things that you think are going to be like your best clients and repeat work and all of that stuff. I think it's super important to have that, right? Because that gives you things to be constantly working towards, right? As opposed to just like crossing off behaviors and saying, well, I made the call and I left a voicemail, so that counts, right? Well, not really, right?
You're just going through the motion.
Exactly, right? You're on autopilot, right? And there's a big difference between autopiloting and actually being like present and mindful, when you're doing these kinds of things.
Yeah, and I can give you an accountability failure on my part in the last 7 days that I did to my own team. And I've thought about it every day of like, I need to redo that meeting because of exactly what we're talking about. So I literally wheeled in one of the big spinnable whiteboards right in a conference room and brought in the team. And I said, okay, I want to get really down to basics here for just a second. Just indulge me for like 10 minutes. I have a plan, right? I just need the answers from you so I can get there. And so I said, I want to write down our customers.
That's such a D statement. I have a plan. I just need your ansers.
But I wasn't lying.
I know you weren't, right? But
I'm being.
Think about how Nanette would phrase that same sentence in that same situation to be completely different.
I get that, and that's one of the parts of the failure, right? Is because I instantly alienated my entire team.
Absolutely, because it's your plan.
It's my plan, right? And now I've got to get all of them to buy in. And say,
absolutely,
excellent.
Big Clint's coming in,
Yeah.
So I realize that now, right? And so I want to redo this meeting, and I'll have to, literally tuck my tail and just say, hey, look, I screwed up. Yeah. Let's talk about this as a team. But what I wanted to do is write down our top 15 customers and rate them just on a scale of 1 to 5. Just opinions, opinions, and based on what we've done in the past with them, how many jobs we've bid, because we just don't have that data. Nobody's ever tracked it. So I did that. And what the funny thing is like, we're trying to do our double our goal from last year. in 1 year. So that's a pretty huge task, right? And I look at the board and I think, okay, so 3 out of 15 are 4s, no 5s.
Oh wow.
That's tough, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of them are 2s and 1s and 0s.
But that should mean that it's pretty low hanging fruit, right? I mean, if they're 1s and 2s, then a little bit more nurturing, a little bit more engagement.
Which
should move them to 3s or 4s.
Which is what my plan, right?
Okay, yeah.
So communicating that statement to them, I did not do.
Oh,
It was just like,
I was
hey,
about to ask, where did this fail?
right. So everybody just kept saying like, so why do you want to know this? Why do you want to know this? These are my customers.
So
why
you
do you want to know
didn't
this?
describe the impact or where you're trying to
Right.
go with it?
So finally, I kind of just said, hey, look, what I'm trying to do is figure out who our 2s are and get them to 4s. And everybody, but it was too late. I'd already kind of screwed that whole thing up. So I just kind of ended the meeting like, I have my information, right?
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Lunch is being
Super
served in the
deep,
conference
super deep.
room.
Guys, thanks a lot. I'll figure it out from here. See you later.
Yeah.
And they're all just like, oh my God, we're going to get canned at the end of the day.
It's funny you say that because literally that was the look on everybody's faces.
Of course it is, man. When you show up and you're like,
I know.
hey,
Well, one guy's, he's been doing this for 34 years, I think. And he was literally like, you could tell he was like, I'm not giving you any of this information, so you can send me to pasture
exactly.
and hire a new guy. I'm
Yeah.
not doing this. So, but I'm so much of a team mentality type player. I know that doesn't, you wouldn't think that as a high D, right? But
Oh, I think it, because, yeah.
I love the team, right?
Sure.
I just love to be in charge of the team.
Yeah,
There's
there it is.
the
There it
caveat,
is.
right?
Yeah.
So,
But
I loved it.
ultimately, that's a contradiction because I think you discovered that.
Agreed, right?
Yeah.
So that's some development, but like I love that team mentality of like we're gonna go kill this, and I'm the first one to give props to people that go kill it. I never talk about me in a meeting like, hey, how'd we do this week? I'm like, hey, so and so sold $2 million. That guy killed it on this job. Hey man, he was in a meeting. I was in a meeting with him. Super impressed with that guy. I'm always that way, so I do love the team.
Mhm.
But when I get out of those meetings like that, and I feel like we have a plan and everybody's going to go take care of their end, that's that accountability side that I just trust that everybody I just sent on their merry way, they're going to figure out their own plan. They're going to stick to their own plan to get to this goal, right? And that just doesn't happen with different personalities.
Yeah.
So that's why I say the failure of that is I walk out of there and I'm like, shit, I've got to go set goals for that guy. I've got to check in with him once a day on that. And
Yeah, you got to unwind the damage you did or the fear you put into people's heart. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get,
Absolutely.
That's
right.
tough.
It's a fine line when you're like running a team.
hey,
you know?
that's a mistake I made, and I'll eat that shit because now I know how to do it different,
yeah.
and
Well,
we'll fix it.
that's how there's
how you
the
learn.
lesson learned right
Yeah.
there. Go do it. If it sucks, then redo it, right?
Yeah.
You'll get a second chance.
Yeah, don't
You
feel
know.
defeated if there's a
So-
screw.
When I have a question, you were talking about the fact that you're okay like passing on accolades to the team. You don't need to like own the success of the team and stuff like that. Is that part of being a D, or is that part of you being like an aware D and your experience in the military and stuff like that?
Yes, to answer your question. A little bit of all that, but what it is because people have never done that for me. So a high D needs a lot of accolades, and you need to
Imagine
give them
that.
trophies.
Really,
You just
because
do.
I think of the I as needing a lot of
No,
they
accolades, a
do.
lot of trophies, and
But
stuff.
if you tell if a D goes and kills it for you, and you just like, cool man, and you walk away, it's like I don't even get a fucking thanks. I just made you a
is,
gazillion
it
dollars.
winning enough for you?
If it's me winning, but if I won for you, I need a little bit of boost.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
need,
think
I need
more
That's
some-
and
interesting.
more-
As a matter of fact, when I hired on with this company, I actually told our president, I said, just, a thanks, just a nugget about me. A thanks goes forever, a million miles for me. I don't need big, checks and all this stuff. Like money's great, but a thanks for me goes a long fucking way.
How
He's
do I
like, hey,
get-
good to know.
How do I get one of those big cardboard checks?
Yeah.
We only give those to the winners.
walk away with a $2,000 cardboard check.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow, it barely fits in the back seat.
So-
Wait till the bank sees this.
Because when we think about teams and stuff like this, I kind of start thinking about there's like the team lead who wants to take all the credit, right? And so I normally think of the D and the I as being that person, right? The D because they don't think about anybody else on the team, right? I built this team, I'm running the team, so therefore you're thanking me, and you should because I did this thing. And the I in my and I'm totally open to being wrong on this, right? I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but the I is just like, yeah, absolutely, thanks a lot, and they don't kind of think further down the road. Is that
I can tell you, I think a D does not like it when a D does all the work and then you say, well, we did that together. Like, no, we didn't, because they'll call you to the
That's
carpet.
where,
No, we didn't do shit.
That's where that thank you just spoke of.
Exactly.
Because when your team, if I come to you and say, thanks, Clint, I really appreciate you, getting me where I needed to be on this project.
I'm working for you for the next 20 years if you do that every time.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
But with an I think if you say we, they're so kind of people oriented a little bit, just kind of natural people oriented. It's like, yeah, we did do that. And there's not a lot of thought, whereas I get offended, right?
Oh, yeah.
We didn't do shit. I did that.
Oh man,
now I hate you.
I get offended as well, right? I mean, I don't want a lot of accolades. I don't want a lot of attention. I'm okay with a thank you. I think because I'm trying to think about how I would react in these kinds of roles. But
I would think you're more of the win is enough more than anybody at the table.
Oh, for sure, right? I talk about this all the time, right? I have this idea when it comes to training with martial arts and stuff. If I do everything right and I still lose, I got to be happy with the fact that I did my process. Whereas if I do like a bad punch, or like if I'm in jiu-jitsu and I don't secure the position, but I somehow get like a submission or whatever, I should be unhappy with that result. I'm so focused on the process that the results almost don't even matter, right? And it's taken me a while to get there. And there's some areas of my life where that doesn't hold true, right? Like if I'm playing poker and I bluff because like the math and the numbers say so, and I get called, I have this moment of like, I was wrong, that was stupid, don't do that again. Yeah. But what's weird is like I can get absolutely crushed in jiu-jitsu and be like, you know what, I did everything right. I was mobile, I didn't anchor, I didn't do these things that I know to be bad. Cool. That just means I need to up my game. So it's weird. I've got elements of my life where that is like super flourishing and it's okay, and then in other areas where it's just not applicable at all.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you there for sure.
Right? Like I when I was playing poker and was doing it full time, I had this coach and he was always on me that I was too results focused. Well, man, I lost with jacks, so I shouldn't play jacks. No, jacks is a high quality hand. Like you should be playing jacks. You just need to like maybe not get married to them, and stuff like this. And that like planted this seed that like enabled all of my C-ness, right? And so now I'm like, look, if you run your program, hands off, you're good. Go get it.
Nan and I go through this in mental exercise a lot of times. Well, what did you do? And if you did it right, then we're done.
Yeah.
We just didn't get the win. We didn't close the deal. We can't go any further. Let it go. Go find something else to do.
That's a very if you're out there and you're a sales leader, that's a mentality that you need to adapt.
Well,
right?
and enable, right? This idea that you're not going to close everybody.
I mean, be logical. Right? It's not.
Yeah. I mean, because that's where you absolutely ruin some good salespeople. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like, hey, look, man, I got all the information I could get. I've done everything I can. I think we talked about it multiple times. We tried that plan. We tried this one. It didn't work. Hey, look, let's just go move on. And they get crushed for that because they got bad leaders, right?
Well, or they have weak leaders. Or they have weak
exactly.
leaders that can accept that, or maybe the leader's under the gun for more numbers.
That's what
right?
I was going to say.
Maybe his pressure's, feeling it, and now he's, he's counting all the losses, and maybe it's been a week of just not much success.
And he doesn't want to go say that statement to his boss. Right?
That's that shit rolls downhill mentality that happens in so many sales cultures.
And see, I'm okay with that. Like, give me all the stuff. Let me go report it up, and I'll sit there and take all the shit, and you will feel nothing.
Well, I think that's just part of being a good leader.
Agreed.
And to build on that
personality,
it would be, okay, this is not going anywhere. What's in your pipeline? We've got to really be, because we are on a time crunch, and we've wasted some time. Not wasted, but this didn't come to fruition, and bills got to be paid. What's next, and how can we expedite the sale that we need this week? Because everything is on a time frame. We have to sell something this week, or at least this month, or at least this quarter, or at least this year.
Absolutely.
When do you stop that and then put the gun down that your process sucks? It's not getting you where you want to be.
Well, and you guys are either going to love or hate this, but you can just focus on the results as a salesperson, and it's super easy, right? Because if you're just looking at the bank account, right, and the bank account goes up, you're like, man, I'm winning, right? Without actually following a process, or without actually doing good behaviors or good activities, or holding people accountable, or doing the things that we all know to be super important.
Well, and I guess it goes back to, is there reoccurring business and revenue in the accounts that you have, or is it one cell phone, then another cell phone, then another cell phone,
Yeah.
one and one and one and one and done, right?
And there's a big difference between a transactional sale versus a relationship
Exactly.
sale. Right?
And when in my business, that relational sale will come back to reward us and reward
Of
us and
course,
reward us.
yeah.
So we have
Absolutely.
reoccurring revenue. We just want more of it.
Absolutely.
And then they go through peaks and valleys depending on their patient flow and how much work they're doing.
Exactly.
So you got to see it from the
Big picture.
the big picture, but then you also have to break it into the smaller pieces and make sure that puzzle's fitting together exactly the way you need it to.
Do you think you can be a good sales leader? And if you have this idea of like limitation versus abundance, or that everyone's got to be a yes, do you think that you can run a good successful team?
Well, you said limitation versus abundance.
Exactly. So
Define that a little better for me.
So in my experience, you're in one of two camps, right? When it comes to business and life and everything else, right? There's because I firmly believe there's enough business out there, right? Even with, there's not a lot of competition in my world, but even if there was, there's enough money for me, or there's enough business and opportunity for me to make as much money as I want to make, right? And that's different because coming from like a very corporate, it's like you got to get everybody who walks in the store, because you can't leave the store. You got to be on them. You got to get something. You got to turn it into a money-making opportunity. So it took a long time for me to be okay with the fact of like, hey, look, there's no buying motivation here, right? They don't have a budget, and that's okay. I can't make them have a budget, right? So anytime for the first year and a half, right, of working with Jeff and the website agency and kind of being on this path of working with coaches and everything, every time I got a no, I took it personally. I did something wrong, right? Which is a lot of weight to carry around, right? It's not super healthy, but thankfully I was working with Jeff, who's got like a absolute abundance mindset, like, hey, no big deal, move on to the next one. Do you think that you can not have that mindset of like, man, you should have closed this, right? So something didn't go right. What are we going to do now? And be a good sales leader?
As an S, I want to be successful with every single account. Al has definitely helped me whenever I have that angst of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't get that. And he's like, well,
When you go through the exercise of, what was your process, which I know it because we work in the same arena, what could you have done differently? What went wrong that you could have corrected? And if it's no, yeah, we did it the way we've done it before and been very successful and built some really good relationships, and we look at our key revenue producers, we followed that model. Hey.
But what if you're not of that mindset? What if you're like the D, right? Who has done it themselves, right? They don't really understand this idea of like, because this happens, right? Like this happens in sales cultures, right? And they say, why didn't you get that account, right?
I think we identified that a few minutes ago. It's just they have someone above them putting pressure on them, causing them to have.
But do you think that you can be a successful sales leader with that kind of pressure that's forcing you into that fixed mindset versus
not long term? I think it will make people just feel overwhelmed. And
the answer, simply put, is yes, because it happens every day, right?
Yeah.
People pay their bills, they get stuff done. Probably the majority of that mentality runs the world. They really do.
I guess we'd have to frame like what successful actually means, right? Is successful just meeting the
about to
number?
go
Is
there.
successful like actually keeping like the same people and seeing them grow and flourish and all that
If
That's
you're
stuff?
a salesman and you've sold, you're technically a success.
I was about to say, I'm glad that you put technically in there because I was gonna push back on that if you
Well,
didn't.
of course, I don't believe that model. But I'm just saying that I've got a buddy of mine in Houston that we've recently become. He does what I do on it for another company, and we'll text back and forth. Hey, how's the market? What's going on? And he texted me the other day, and he said like, hey man, just closed these 2 deals, and in his world, those are huge for him. They're huge wins. I don't know what he did to get those, and I don't know how many phone calls he made to get those 2 little deals. And I say little because in my world, like shit, if I can't imagine that I would have to scale off that.
So he's not an actual competitor. He's working at a lower level
he's
than
a
you are.
competitor. Yeah. But he just, I think they have a different team setup where they have a ton of salespeople and they do volume sales, right? They have so many people out there, and I'm a little more reversed on that approach where I think let's narrow our focus, and when we commit to something, we win that thing, right? And if we don't, get it as fast as you can so we can go fill the void.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. But that's my mentality versus their company. So when his success is, if my guys came back at the end of the month and said, hey, these were my wins for the month, and they were those numbers, I'd be screwed, right? But that's the different approach, the shotgun approach versus the sniper bullet, right?
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
you know, is he still successful? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely successful. And he's successful because his element is created for him that is success.
Yeah.
So how you measure it, it's all relative, I think. But
Absolutely.
because if, like I said, if my sales guy came back with those numbers, he'd be a failure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's and that brings up a pretty key point about like how are you framing success, right? And how clearly is that communicated, right? Because if your guys go out and think like that, oh man, that's winning, right?
Well,
and then they come back.
There's capacity, right? Different people have different capacities for
Sure.
what success is, right? I used to see it a lot in the project management side of construction. You could have a project manager pay that guy in another project the same amount of money. One of those could run a $60-70 million job, no problem. The other guy couldn't run over a $2 million job, but you need both.
Mm-hmm.
You pay them both, right?
Yeah.
They're both on your team. They're both successful. They're very different, but it's all what they can do. Not, you know, and you got to put those people on your team to be able to support what you
That
have.
diversity.
Awesome. Let's get another throwdown. All right. Team D, Mr. Clint, accountability, Nuggets. What you got?
Yeah, you know, this is probably one of your harder subjects to talk about as a D, because in your world, you probably think that you're completely right and you own everything anyway, and every little bit of failures or because somebody else did something, right? You got to get over that and realize that, especially if you're a part of a team or you're running a team, you've got to know that, you know, how you communicate those goals and those, I need you to be here in a month, and I need you to be here in 2 months, and how you portray that, and can they handle it? All those things don't apply in your world, but they apply in theirs. So communicating all that stuff is hugely important.
All right. Al, Team I?
I think with an I, it's easy to fool yourself into thinking that you're productive and thinking that you're actually working when you're just treading water or wasting time. And to correct that in my own schedule is, like I said, that category that really I bore down on. What did I do at 8 o'clock? What did I do at 8:15, 8:30, 9? How long did all this take?
Mm-hmm.
And holding yourself accountable to moving through your day as productively as you can. And owning that, owning when you waste time, owning when you were really focused in getting something done, which is so much smaller in the hours and minutes than you think it is.
Okay.
In most cases for me.
Awesome. Nanette, for S's, as far as accountability?
I love the way you always say awesome. For me, as an S, I think it's really important to think my process through, make sure it's logical, it makes sense, be really secure. I know whenever we work together, being secure, knowing your stuff is hugely important, because when you have confrontation, then it won't backfire. You're gonna be on task. You're gonna know what you're talking about. So for me, that's everything in my plan. Is just being secure with it. You normally say awesome.
I was just saying that wasn't an awesome.
I'm thinking about it. I need to marinate on that a little bit, right? Because I think that ties into my, you know, speaking to like Team C people,
Mm-hmm.
right? This episode has been somewhat enlightening for me, because I get so much joy out of the idea that here are the behaviors I have to do, and I have these lined out, and this is building towards my plan, and then I can shut it off and just go do my merry way, as opposed to feeling like I've got to be on all the time. I got to be selling to everybody and trying to close everybody and stuff like this. And that's how I operated and felt and ran forever, right? Like at the Kung Fu school, everyone was always talking about how John was like a sales guy, right? And that was really just meaning that I was the annoying guy who was trying to push like banking products and cell phone products on everybody I knew, because it was just, I had this outlook of limitations. I got to close everybody. When I learned about KPIs and planning and all of these things, and, you know, managing my behaviors and not managing the outcomes, I didn't even realize how much of a C idea that is until like we're having this conversation right here, right? I thrive in that environment, and C's do. The thing to remember is that if you're a C and you're leading a team, think about how much that didn't resonate with everybody else around the table, right? Of like building a plan and building weekly behaviors and then adjusting and then holding people accountable to that kind of stuff. Not micromanaging, but, you know, building some agreements and holding people accountable. I live in that world, right? I'm an accountability partner for like 4 or 5 people, right? Because they're like, man, I'm struggling with this. Call me.
You're a babysitter.
I don't know necessarily that. Hold on, we'll talk about that in a second. So just be aware that as a CEO, you're going to love this stuff and the numbers and the process, but like not everybody is. So you got to figure out a way so that way they can build their own, right? To Clint's point, right? They're going to buy into the plan that they help you build, right? Where if you just show up and say, this is the plan, this is what we're doing, and you don't give them any input, super easy for them to like autopilot the crap out of that thing and then throw their hands up whenever it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, right, outside of Throwdown real quick, because I think that this is important. I think accountability takes a bunch of different forms, right? You can hold yourself accountable, right, to your calendar or to like your to-do list or anything else like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with having an accountability partner that you're sharing. Hey, look, these are the things I did this week. What did you do, right? But I think it's got to go both ways.
As long as it makes you more efficient.
Absolutely.
There's a
For
line.
sure.
There's a line.
Yeah.
When I'm doing more paperwork and writing more stuff down and creating more goals instead of doing the actual task, right? So in my world, there's a very strict line of all of this isn't worth me just going and doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can talk about shit all day long, but until you actually go do it.
Absolutely, right? I mean, when I have accountability conversations with the people that are holding me accountable or vice versa, there's already a bunch of like legwork already done, right? Hey, what are my goals? What am I doing to get there and everything else like this? And then for me personally, I don't want to get on and tell this person who like knows me and obviously cares enough about me to like try to hold me accountable that I didn't do these things, right? And then there's things like Stick, right? Which is like an online community, and you can build traps around yourself. We didn't really talk about this today, but there's like a thing called accountability traps, right? So if you're on the KPI train and you're thinking about KPIs and weekly behaviors and activities and stuff like that, you can frame that stuff inside a Stick, right? You get an accountability partner, and one of my accountability partners, and I did this for a while, he had his weekly counts as far as cold calling and networking and reaching out to people and stuff like this. If he didn't meet those numbers, he had to donate money to a cause he saw no value in, actually really, really didn't like. And so that made him really kind of stick to his plan and follow his process. And then you have to adjust as necessary, of course, but you know, it's not in my world when I'm having these accountability calls, it's not like well, let's take an hour and talk about how your week was. Did you do it or not?
Yeah.
And if not, why? And what does that mean for next week?
Yeah, and the reason I said what I said is because you tell an I, especially a super I, that you have to do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go, I need you to sit at the desk and I need you to write all this stuff out every day. When he fails, you just made an excuse for him.
Absolutely.
I didn't have time to go do all this stuff that I normally do. And, you know, I used to kill it before you made me do all this stuff. So
you're speaking my language, man.
You got to know. You know.
As a CRM guy who's working with like mostly sales teams with like a lot of eyes.
That's the first thing I would want to say to you.
Is that it's just like, I have to spend time with management to figure out, hey, what can we give these guys for like a motivator to like actually
what will they actually
steak
do?
Knives.
Steak knives, yeah.
Well, what will they actually do versus what will they use as an
Absolutely.
excuse to fail? Right?
Absolutely, right? So,
because if you tell them that they got to do this and they fail because they were spending their time doing it, that's your sword to fall on.
There's this guy that I follow and I love, and he talks about that if you don't track your behaviors, even if you crush the month, right, you lose half your commission. Because there's an agreement in place, right? You're going to do certain things. You're going to follow your activities and everything else and not be just results focused. And I love that, right?
I know you do.
I love that so much.
I'd be like, give me half my money.
I just want to win.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you
too.
keep the rest of it because it makes you feel better that
Winning
I didn't turn in the paperwork.
Winning
Great.
Following the process.
Right. Yeah, there we go. All right, Mr. Professor.
Yeah, I'd say
they're so much
know.
smarter than me because they put their shit down. Right on. Go with that. That's why you're in academics. Keep it up.
That's why this podcast is so much fun to me, though, is because we're not saying that this is the one avenue to do that.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
And
There's 1,000 ways of getting it done.
That is the
right?
fun part.
Yeah.
Because we all like have decent lives here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would fail miserably at trying to be John. I would. I'd be just a horrible C.
Yes, you would.
Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right?
it's
And-
not on
and
paper? Well,
you-
it's right up here in the old noggin.
You couldn't work for me. Right?
I don't want to.
I know you don't, right?
Because I wouldn't hire you.
Yeah, well, there is that, right? I mean, we would get to this accountability part of the conversation, and I'd be like, "Hey, Al, like, okay, let's build out your weekly plan," and you'd be like, "Man, I'm just gonna kill it," and I'd be like, "Nah, no, I'd go."
That's his.
So let's wrap up before we get down on like another
I
tangent.
could go down another 30 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So
All righty.
All right.
awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for tuning in,
Little
everybody.
Post
Thanks, y'all.
podcast
Yeah,
banter
absolutely,
there.
for sure. If you
Good
know
stuff.
anybody else in sales who's struggling, please share this with them. It's hard enough. You don't have to be out there by yourself. If you need an accountability partner, find one. It doesn't necessarily have to be in
Call
the same
John.
company. Yeah, call me, right? Send me an email, John at Sales Throwdown. If you need some accountability help, I will help you, or I'll find someone to help you out.
He'll
And-
call me.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, hey, you want to meet Al? He's a great accountability
Guy,
partner.
you're blowing it up. Great job. Keep it up.
Awesome. So share this with everyone. If you're following us on social media, that's great. Share it, please. Everything is at Sales Throwdown. If you don't know where you are or what team you're on, Team I, Team C, Team D, Team S, send us an email, assessments@salesthrowdown.com, and we'll get you hooked up. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye.